Hey, if you're a physician or any business owner and you've ever felt like running the business and working in the business at the same time never actually helps you make progress on either and you're just stuck spinning your wheels, today's episode is for you. We have Amber Powers today. She is a fractional COO, an M&A integration expert, and self-proclaimed authoritative badass. And honestly, with her track record, she's earned the title, in my opinion. She's the founder of Powerspeak Consulting, where she helps stabilize organizations at their most critical inflection points. She cleans up noisy data, eliminates manual workarounds, drives integrations across the finish line. If you're like me running a business, you probably have 17 or 1,700 half-done projects. That's where someone like Amber could come in and help you out. She's got a project management professional certification, an MBA from DePaul, and she'll tell you her most important degree is GSD, which is getting stuff done, we'll call it. She's the operator you call when legacy workflows are dragging on your margins, your team is out of bandwidth, or you're out of bandwidth, and you need someone embedded, accountable, and built for urgency. Welcome, Amber.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. I'm excited to chat with you because this is something that I think all of us reach pretty quickly in business world where feel like an octopus arm, as we call it. Like there's too many things going. You need 8 arms to do it. Tell me, before we get too far into it, what is a COO and what is a fractional COO for those that may not be familiar?
Sure. A COO is a chief operating officer. They are the ones that they're the glue that's holding the company together. So when you have the chief executive officer, they own the company, but their right-hand person, making sure that all the systems are flowing together. They may be running HR, they may be running IT, and they're making sure that all the teams are making the company run smoothly. So fractional COO does the same, but on a more of a part-time basis. We are not consultants, so we are embedded in your company. We're like, you can use us 10 hours a week, you can use us 5 hours a week, 20 hours a week. It's having that expertise at your side, just in a smaller capacity. So there's a lot of companies that could use this executive role. And it could be HR. It could be a lot of companies will start with the chief financial officer first because they want to make sure their books are clean, and then they'll expand. But it just gives you the opportunity to have that expertise and then test out, who do I need? And that way it doesn't hit your cash flow so hard. You can bring them in, see if you like it, see if you need more or less, but you have somebody who's committed to your company, who's part of the culture, working with you, however you need them to.
Yeah, you touched on an important part. Like it's not just a coach or a consultant, right? Like it's somebody who's
Mhm.
actually in there doing stuff on your behalf. Almost like the fractional part could be said a different way, like a part-time
Yes.
employee. But at the C level, the C-suite level, we don't say part-time, we say
Right.
fractional for CFO or COO. So you're getting a full-time experience level person with lots of experience, but at a fraction of the cost, we should say, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. So then, I mean, raise your hand if you need that, like all of us, right? What does it mean where would somebody be? Let me start this question over. Edit 3, 2, 1. So how do you know when you've reached a limit that maybe a COO or fractional COO might be a good decision?
So what I found is the owners or the founders find themselves working so much in the business and they're no longer have time to work on the business. So from a financial perspective, they're doing all the books. They're reconciling, they're making sure that all the bills are paid, and they're trying to forecast and they're trying to do all of these things. And yet their business isn't growing because they've just realized that they've spent half their day trying to make sure the financials are updated. The same thing with operations. They need to go find the vendors. They need to figure out the technology. They're dealing with HR issues, those kind of things. That's all they're doing. And again, the business that they originally started that they wanted to grow isn't going anywhere because they can't do any business development. That when that starts to be inhibiting, and there's also the expertise component, they may be really good at the books. They may have their head around the operations and how all it runs, but they have started to hire people and realize that there's an HR issue and they don't have any policies in place. So those are like those big things. That's when you start to consider, ooh, maybe I should bring it. And you could bring in somebody lower level. You could bring in somebody more junior, but then you're going to have to oversee and tell them all the things to do. You may have hired and executive assistants, but it's still not enough. And so you want somebody who can come in with the expertise and just go, like say, I need you to do this. And then they're off to the races. That's when you start to see bringing in.
Yeah, that's a great differentiator. So like if you bring in somebody to be an assistant, or a lot of people look for VAs, but maybe
Mhm.
don't even know how to coach or guide or tell them
Yeah,
what they need, as opposed to somebody at a COO level, you might just say, I need this project done. And the COO is like, got it. And then you don't have to hear from them again until it's done or until there's an ownership decision that needs to be made. Would you say
right.
that's accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know too, right? So when you've had somebody who's had experience in that role, they can also coach you. I mean, it's okay as a founder, you can't know everything, right? So they can coach you and, hey, let's look at this direction. Let's look at this strategy. This is how we could grow. So yeah.
Yeah. So I know you've worked with healthcare clients in the past. Do you have an example where you've helped one spend more time working on the business? Let's clarify that term rather than in the business too.
Sure. I'm working with a school for special needs kids, but they also do clinical work, and they've been around for quite a while. The founder realizes that she wants to grow the business, and she's read all the books, she's gone to all the conferences, but she knows that her team is still, and she's a very strong team, but still relying on her tremendously. And so I'm going to go in and look at the processes, look the workflows. A lot of times it's those handoffs from one team to another. How smooth is that? And then also, can we develop any reporting to give to her so she can know how the business is running, but doesn't have to check in every day, all day? So those are the kinds of things like she wants to be out in the community talking about that kind of thing. And so this would be allow her to do that without checking in every day on the team and being in the school all day long.
Yeah, I want to clarify too. Like if bigger organizations like that have somewhat of a head count and a head count of one, a company with a head count of one, like
Mhm.
you're running a clinic, it's cash pay, you're the physician, but also the accountant and also the bookkeeper and also the marketing director and all of the titles, right? What would be the first thing you might touch on if somebody was like, I don't even know where to start. I've just kind of like done it with duct tape. And what does that look like when you're interviewing somebody like that? And then
Yeah.
what would be maybe your first area of focus?
One thing that I hear a lot with healthcare is the scheduling, that it's just, you may have a system that you're using, but it's just not always flowing very well. The front office, they're calling, they're making phone calls, they're working on spreadsheets, and there's not a good system. So that's what I like to look in at first, because I think the teams build these workarounds and figure out, yep, this works, we're making this work, but have somebody come in from the outside like, this is not pretty. So scheduling is a thing that I'd like to look at. And then also the billing. I know sometimes working with the various insurance companies, things might get kicked back, that kind of thing. So where they often don't have time to figure out where those gaps are, and are there any routine things that keep happening that you could fix. So the other thing is I like to go in and look at the process and hear all the complaints, like something keep happening over and over. Okay, let's target that because it's probably taking up a lot of your time. Let's smooth it out because there's risk there too, right? There's risk to what are we missing? What are we not getting paid on? And then the other piece is you feel like, oh, I'm just going to have to hire another person. But do you? Don't I'd love to see if we can permit more hires and also not pile on the technology. Is it working? Is it not working? So those are the things that I really like to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any business, I think we're all like leaking out of our bucket, like some time that could be cleaned up, which you touched on, and probably some finances that are maybe not the cleanest. Like I know we probably have duplicate subscriptions or subscriptions we're not even using anymore.
Right.
But you talked about making it more efficient without adding employees. And I know that you've helped a private equity firm go from 1 billion to 3 billion
Hmm.
in management without even adding headcount. And you turned around a Fortune 500 cybersecurity team that cut development cycle time by 50%. So what can you draw from those? What was that like?
Yeah.
And well, how are they similar? And like, what is like, how did that work? Tell us about those things.
Okay. So private equity is a lot more manual than you would expect. It kind of reminds me like when you're getting a mortgage and you have to sign that stack of paperwork. and it's just, you're surprised at how paperwork. Can I DocuSign? But it's a lot of times it's paper. So that's what private equity is still going through. And so there's a lot of back and forth when you're wiring money and that kind of thing. And when I got to the team, they were still emailing a lot back and forth. And I'm like, this just is not efficient. We need to have some kind of more central location that teams can access and work through all of these. And you can't keep everything in your head. You can't remember everything. And so that's what I didn't like. There was just too much room for error there. So what happened was they were growing tremendously. Like, it wasn't me growing, doing that piece, but we had to handle all of that. And I thought, okay, if we're going to handle this, then we just cannot keep remembering everything in our heads. So I worked with the teams, and we had a third party that we're working with too, and we built a centralized location that we could track all of the subscriptions that we were receiving and tracking them from start to finish, and seeing where they are in the process and the handoffs, and everybody could see where the handoffs are. So we didn't lose anything, so and so because there was some automation in there, then we didn't have to hire the headcount. Didn't matter what the volume was. We would be able to handle it.
Yeah, perfect. And then how do you cut development cycle time by 50% for the cybersecurity team?
Let me think back to that one for a second. Very good question. Again, it's looking at those processes. So I think of it like playing telephone. When you're a kid and you play telephone and you like tell the thing, and 5 people later, you have no idea what started is not what was at the end. And that's what happens with those handoffs. You start at one and you get through and, okay, so no, that is not where we're supposed to be. And why are you doing that? And you're duplicating. So I love a good whiteboard session. And so if you have a team, there was just a team and they were just the way that the handoffs are going, we broke it all down and figured out where things were getting stuck and thought, okay, we need to go fix that. Let's go fix that. And so dive into that. And companies often don't, or even small firms just don't have the time to dig into that. That's what I love to do. But there's so much benefit. It's not just efficiency. There's a lot of cost savings to be had by going through that exercise.
Yeah, it's almost like I can hear people being like, I don't have time to sit down and do a whiteboard session because I'm doing the in the business stuff. I don't have
Yes.
that time to stop and work more on it strategically and identify, I think you call them bottlenecks, but
Yeah.
people will say the word constraint or inefficiencies or it's kind of like blockades, or that's not the right word either. We call them constraints at Origins Incubator,
Okay. Yeah.
but you call them bottlenecks. So I think that is probably kind of the throughput through your most recent stories is like, you have to step back for a minute, look at it as an owner and tell me if I'm wrong and try to identify like what will open up the floodgates, what's going to
Mhm.
open that bottleneck. And then let's address that first.
Yeah.
Like, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. It's oftentimes I find that owners are very visionary and they have so many things. And all those things, you try to move the needle a little bit, but then you never really get moving on anything. So I often will go in with and sit down with the owner and say, just brain dump. Give me everything that you want to do, what's in your head, and then let's prioritize it. And it's always going to take longer than you think it is. But if we prioritize it, and then we're going to build a roadmap and just focus on these 2 things. And I know it's going to be frustrating because you want to do everything else, but the progress is going to be made if you just work on these 2 things for now, and then we'll work on the next 2 things. And where I can help and solve, I love to get in, and I'm not one who's like, okay, here's your nice 50-page deck, go execute. I
Yeah.
really like to be alongside and just make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to touch on too with the definition of an operations person, because that's such a broad term, right? So if you're
Hmm.
not familiar, you didn't come from the Fortune 500 world. Another way to say it, like you just touched on, the visionary, like the founder, usually this person, but then they're not always the best at being the integrator or the
Absolutely.
operator, which is what, depending on the books you've read or the YouTube videos you've watched, like that's what COOs do is like they make things happen.
Yeah.
Because I know, as I said, I have 17 half done projects because I'm like, oh, this is a really good project to do, but I'm starting it, and then I have a sales call or a client call,
Right.
or something else comes up that pulls me away, and then all of my tabs stay open until
Yes.
I just get fed up and close them all, and then I forget about it forever. So, um, having somebody like Amber, like you, come in and just help, like focus on like what is the most important thing here, and I know those are all important too. They're not urgent right now, so let's do this. I would see a huge benefit from having someone like you come in.
Yeah.
So, how did you even get to Powers Peak Consulting? Like, what was your background that came into now being a fractional COO? What gave you the confidence to kind of start that?
Yeah. I started in project management in the banking world and actually pivoted from being an analyst. So when I got into project management, I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know it was a thing. And then when I learned about it, I'm like, wait, I'm going to get paid to help people organize things and tell them what to do. This is awesome. And it just took off from there. I worked on a whole lot of projects and I worked in a few different companies doing that. And then a previous COO brought me on to be the director of operations at the private equity fund. And I sat back and thought, okay, I'm running the operations. Do I like the operations or the day to day, or do I like going in and fixing things? And I realized fairly quickly, looked back in my career, I'm like, I love to go in and fix things and make things better and make people's jobs easier. And sometimes when you do that, the company you're working for isn't always ready for you to do the next thing. They just are like, no, we're good. Keep doing what you're doing. I thought, and then I get a little antsy. So I thought, I think I could go on my own and do this. Go find the companies that need this, that are ready for this, do the work, and then move on. And so this whole fractional COO was like, this is it. So I had an opportunity to have a contract with a woman who was working on a not for profit, actually. She said, I have the vision, we have the strategy, but we need someone to really guide everybody through this process and make sure we have certain dates that we have to hit. It was a large transformation. So that's where I started and said, okay, I have 8 months to figure out if this is going to work, if this is not. And I was building the business development. I'm like, this is a lot of fun. Actually, you have to think like you're everything. I mean, obviously, you are business development, you are marketing, you are HR, you have all those things. And I'm like, I had the financial background. It's like, okay, I can run the business. I'm not worried about that. It's just me. So there's no HR. And the marketing, that's a piece where I'm like, that's not my sweet spot, but I'm getting there. But I loved the business development. I loved talking about what I was doing, sharing it with other people, learning so many incredible businesses. I mean, just amazing hearing what's keeping the world running. And so I thought, this is it. I'm going to keep doing it until I can't, right? So it's really been, so I'm 2.5 years in now, and I'm still just loving every day.
It sounds like it would be super rewarding. Like you go in, you talk to a founder who is drowning. You go in,
Yes.
help them set up systems, save a bunch of time, save a bunch of money, and then they probably aren't angry with you at the end. They're probably like, "Wow, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, thank you so much." Like, is that
Yeah.
kind of the arc that happens?
It is. It is. Yes. You just every day. I mean, I've gone into businesses where we've prevented fraud, or I've gone into businesses that have just it's so amazing when I work with the the team members and I can coach them up a little bit, and then a year later they're like, oh yeah, we're still using your pods that you put together, we're still using, like, now I've affected a whole company and they're still using what I suggested. And which is very hard. I mean, that's a hard thing to do, but it is so rewarding just to hear that, okay, I made them better. They're doing, I don't want them to need me. I really want them to, like, eventually fire me because I've done everything that I could do. So it's
Yeah.
a harsh word, but
No, right. Like I know, I mean, in medicine, it's not the same that you don't want to keep your customers forever. You don't want to increase the lifetime value of your customers in medicine because that means they're
yeah,
never getting better. So you
right.
ultimately want to help them get better, give them the tools to fish, and then send them on their way.
Yeah,
Probably pretty similar for you.
you're right. It absolutely is the same. Which is also why I got into the business to just help out and then move on, instead of staying, and because then I'm not doing my job. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Like, what would you say to somebody who is listening to this, who is trying to build a practice, working 60 plus hours a week? I had the thought today in the shower. I was like, when I wake up, I start working. Kind of. What would you say to them who was like, I know something's broken, but I don't know where to start? Like, what would be if you were to just generically say to somebody, all right, usually these are the things to look at first?
So if I've kind of read up on this, if you don't have anybody, if you are truly a solopreneur, the starting place is to get a virtual assistant and offload. You could do either that's some marketing tasks. So you're trying to put a deck together for a presentation, that kind of thing. And they're virtual, right? So you can't give them all access to everything because you have to build that level of trust. But over time, if you're like, oh wow, this is really saving me a lot of work, you can move on to the executive assistant. And that may be more in person or just somebody you trust, that they could help with communications that are going out. They can call vendors for you. They might be able to, you might be able to trying to do some marketing thing. They could almost build out a lot of it if you give them a little bit of direction. But it's usually when the next step is when you start to hire a team. And now you're spending all of your time managing that team. Not only the team, but they're working together. And how well are they working together? And you find yourself talking with that team more than you're spending on whatever you want to do in the business, whether it's helping grow the business and spending time with patients or clients or that kind of thing. It's what originally made you happy. I always tell people to sit back and say, what makes me happy? When was I happiest? And if you're not doing any of that anymore, there are people who love to do the stuff that you don't like to do. I am not the visionary, but I work very well with visionaries because they have all the ideas and I can harness them in and work, right? So if I'm going to expand or grow, I need that expertise because I just can't do all of it. So I think when you start finding that you're working all day, all night, and you're not seeing your family and you feel burnout and you're suffering, your health is suffering, it's time to sit down and start to write out. Look at your calendar. Is quite frankly, look at your calendar and see what your calendar looks like all day and mark it red and green of what you like and don't like, or take a list and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. I guarantee you there's somebody who could do that stuff that you don't like and probably does it really well. And if you think about what you could pay them and then what you're making, if they could do that for you, think about how much you could grow. So you also have to think about how much your time is worth, because that's the finite part of the whole situation.
Yeah, I think time and energy too, right? So,
Yeah.
like, is this draining? Is this not draining? Do I like it? Do I not like it? And is it worth my time or not?
Right.
Um, what I can hear people screaming at us while they're listening is, but I can't afford to hire somebody. Uh, and I don't have time to train them. Kind of what have you heard that before? Like what are your thoughts on those two questions?
So if you're working a lot of hours and can't afford somebody, then I think it's important to sit down and say, what are you spending the hours on? I personally, just within the last few weeks, realized that I was joining a lot of networking groups, but really wasn't getting anywhere, and thought, this is very social. I met a lot of great people, but I was losing the ability to target new clients, new customers. I scaled back on joining those groups. So I think it just takes a sit down um, and have a hard talk with yourself about where are you, what is making you money, and how do you do more of that, and where can you pull back? So that perspective, and then um, training them. That is a hard one. That is a hard one. But it's important to look at the long-term thinking. So if you're going to continue to spend 15 hours a week on something, and 2 months later, you're still spending 10 and 15 hours a week, and you could have spent 30 hours, 40 hours training that person, and now you don't have to do it anymore after a month, 2 weeks to a month or whatever. Now your time's freed up. But so it's just working on that balance, but thinking in the long term.
Yeah, I think your first point was great too, like doing your time audit and then not only recognize like all the things you're doing which feel important while you're doing them, but could actually be like productive procrastination or not worthwhile, not in a good enough return on your time investment, like with you with his networking groups. But with some people, it might be like, let me just perfect my brand colors or perfect my logo.
Right.
All these like, let's make sure this is all perfect, which don't actually move the needle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I 100% agree with Amber. Do a time audit, like 2 weeks probably. Write down if you like it or not. Write down if it drains you or energizes you. And then does this make my customers happy or make me money or both? And if
Hmm.
the answer to either of those is no, then you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And if you put everything into your calendar, you can actually link it up. If you use AI, you could link it up to Chat GPT or Claude, whoever you use, and it will audit it for you. Like you don't even, if you're putting everything into your calendar, but it'll audit it for you and it'll tell you how much time you're using in all of the things and then give you recommendations. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So on that front, do you find that AI actually helps with operation, the solo person get further along with that? Or do you think um, you know, probably humans still need to be in the loop quite a bit?
I think they do. I think it's very good for supporting what you're trying to do operationally. If you're writing something or if you're trying to build projections or, financials, it's great for that kind of thing because it's very specific and tactical, but it's not foolproof yet. Right. And so there are ways you can automate certain tasks. I do a lot of commentary on LinkedIn and I write a newsletter once a month and I will write it. I want it to be in my voice, but I do a gut check with AI. And I have another client where the variety of documents from a variety of systems and she needed to create a PowerPoint of summarizing all that. So we dumped it all in and said, recreate this and prove out that the numbers that you have match the numbers that she has and build in the commentary. And it did it. And the writing the commentary was the hardest, so if it's definitely useful, but check it. Fact check it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like I ask AI for 30 minutes when I could have written it myself in 10, like wait for the
Yeah.
answer, reprompt it, uh,
Right.
all of those things. But I think, yeah, I mean, analyze your finances, analyze your calendar. Like
Hmm.
what I mentioned earlier, probably have unused subscription, be like, upload a bank document. Like, what are all my subscriptions?
Yeah.
Like, could be a
Yeah.
useful use of your time so you don't have to go with a highlighter like I've done in the past. Now, you mentioned a newsletter and LinkedIn. So the website is powerspeakworks.com. So powers and works are plural. Peak is
Yep.
singular, powerspeakworks.com. But could they get the newsletter there or on
Yes.
LinkedIn too, right? Amber
Yes.
Powers.
Yep. Amber S. Powers on LinkedIn, and there's an opportunity that you can join my newsletter there. And you can also go onto the website, and there's a link where you can type in your information, and then you'll get the newsletter. I promise it's monthly. It's not spamming. It's quick and easy. I don't like to see all the ads and all that kind of stuff. It's tips. It's good. If you're looking for some help operationally, it's a little humor in there too.
Yeah. And I know you're doing like a 10-day bottleneck breakthrough. What is that?
So that is where if there is a specific area, so this is often for smaller companies or it could be a part of a company. So I will go in if you're frustrated by something that's going on operationally, something keeps getting stuck, takes a lot of time, something is wrong, but you don't have the time to do that. You can hire me. I will spend 2 weeks. It's not full time because I know can't spend 40 hours. So that's why it's 10 days, but I'll get a look at it. I'll dive into the process of how it all works and then figure out where the gaps are, where the problems are and say, okay, this is how you're going to need to fix it. And then you can hire me to continue to do the work, or now you know what the problem is, you can go fix it yourself. So it's a nice, just quick and an easy way if you've got something that's just been eating at you for a while that you could use some support with.
Yeah, that's amazing. So without committing to a fractional COO kind of for the long term, a nice way to kind of see and have guidance from somebody who's actually done these audits in the past, apply it to your business.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, I don't know, even know where to start, I'm running around just putting out fires most of the time. Um, how do I
Right.
know if it's finance or time or something else? I mean, that's amazing. I might call you after
Yeah.
this. I think every business could probably use that. What do you see too with, how would you characterize the ROI or return on investment for somebody that did hire you as a fractional COO or hired anybody else as fractional COO? What does the investment look like? We know it's executive level expertise without like the whole price tag, but when does that make
Mhm.
sense?
I think it makes sense when you get the time back to expand the business. Um, and there's a few ways for that. It's the time But I also think there's a risk component. So from an HR perspective, if you don't have those policies in place, what happens if something with an employee, there's a risk, something just happens and you don't have anything to fall back on, right? That can get very expensive very quickly with attorneys and all of that kind of thing, right? From the marketing perspective, if it's not your strong suit or you don't have time, bringing a marketing person is a great way to just they have so many ideas specifically on are you business to consumer? Are you business to business? How do you market that? What direction do you go in? Just making sure that your website is optimized, all those kind of things. And then operationally, that goes back to you might be sitting on, "Oh, I need to add more technology or I need to hire another person." And the question is, is that what you want to spend your money on long term? Or can you bring somebody in who can make things work with what you have existing? And then you're paying that person one time and then you're good. All those things can affect you always think about it in terms of profit and growth and the sales, but all of these pieces that they don't always have to be expenses to your bottom line in the long.
Yeah, I think definitely taking the time to step back and decide like what is a priority and what maybe isn't. Because if you're working 80 hours a week and as we said, some of those hours aren't productive hours, then maybe you don't have to work 80 hours a week for the same results. Or those 80 hours could double, triple your results as well. And maybe bringing in somebody for a 10-day bottleneck break there might be a super valuable use of your time because it's not just a one-time payment. It's a setting up operations or systems for, like you said, months or years later for that business to be more efficient, spend more time with their family or on self-care or having more energy just with their current clients or patients as well. So I think anybody that's struggling with time, energy might do well to check out Amber, her free newsletter for sure, but also on LinkedIn, Amber Powers and Powerspeakworks.com. Now, I want to kind of ask, like, if there's one thing that you see people get wrong all the time, either about working with you or like what the biggest mistakes you see when you first approach a client, what would that be? Like, what are the biggest mistakes you see people doing, and how would you go about fixing them before I let you get back to your day?
I think the biggest thing is you can just keep going and let operations go. And you can bring in a junior level team and think it's going to work. There's something to really be said for bringing in expertise and paying attention to the operations because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where sales growth is happening and your operations or your technology can't keep up because that's going to affect your clients. And it's a bad experience. And I think it's important to get it right.
Yeah, so we didn't even touch on that, but I think if you're growing too fast and your systems can't keep up with you, then your reputation starts to suffer a little bit too, right?
Yep.
And so that flywheel of word of mouth referrals that was so great in the beginning because everybody knew you personally or you were able to go above and beyond in the early days because you had to. That kind of starts to lead to not as favorable reviews or slower word of mouth or none at all or negative word of mouth. So that's another piece in here where if your things are falling through the cracks, might be time for a 10-day breakthrough boot camp. Bottleneck breakthrough.
Well done. You are marketing me. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, legitimately, like I am a business owner that a lot of stuff is, hopefully not as much anymore, but had been falling through the cracks and definitely noticed an energetic shift to like how I show up each day as well. So I love it, Amber. Thank you for all of your answers today and helpful tips. If you guys want to learn more about Amber Powers, go to powerspeakworks.com and on LinkedIn for Powers and go out and get your own degree for GSD or getting shit done. Thank you so much, Amber, for being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
What a great conversation with Amber Powers. Thank you so much for listening to the Radigan Roundtable. And if you enjoyed it and found it valuable, the only ask we have from you right now is to just share this with a friend. So if you know somebody who might enjoy this episode or this show entirely, do us a favor and just say, hey, think you'd like this. It's called the Radigan Roundtable. And that would be such a great way to support us here at the show. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.